A few moments ago, Texas teen Karmelo Anthony plans to appeal his murder conviction in the stabbing death of Austin Metcalf at a high school track meet last year when they were both 17 years old. The jury sentenced him to 35 years in prison. Metcalf's father, Jeff, giving an emotional victim impact statement during the sentencing hearing. Quote, "The public response sickens me, especially when a gag order doesn't allow me to defend my son. This was never about race or politics, but what you did was to choose to make it about both. We all bleed the same color. You are free to make choices all your life, but you are not free to not face consequences." Correspondent Brooke Taylor reporting live from McKinney, Texas, with the latest. Hi, Brooke.
Hi, Martha. We just got word that Anthony's legal team has filed that notice of appeal, but just seconds ago, we wrapped up an interview with the district attorney and the lead prosecutor on the case. I could tell you they are extremely confident with the verdict here. There was no cameras in the courtroom, so it's our first time really hearing from them. Take a listen to what they told me their reaction was.
Just relief. Relief that 12 members of our community, the jurors, saw it the same way we did, that this was murder, plain and simple, and then they saw punishment like we saw it, that he needed a lengthy prison sentence.
I was relieved. I thought it would be murder, but until you hear it, of course, a jury can do whatever they want as long as they're following the law. So I was relieved for the family, mostly.
And the jury sentenced Karmelo Anthony to 35 years behind bars for fatally stabbing 17-year-old Austin Metcalf during a high school track meet. Both the DA and lead prosecutor told me they were satisfied with this sentence, even though Anthony faced up to 99 years behind bars. They also said that they were prepared for Anthony to take the stand, and they hoped that he would. Now, I asked what they believed the strongest piece of evidence here was. They both pointed to the surveillance footage. Despite being grainy and shot across the field, they said it reinforced their argument that Anthony wasn't surrounded and this was a one-on-one confrontation despite the defense's self-defense claim. Now, the lead prosecutor told me the national spotlight, it definitely added pressure, but he said they had to tune out that noise, and some of that noise played out in the courtroom. Martha, he told me that race was certainly not a factor, and have people actually pay attention closely to this case and hear what the witnesses had to say, they would know that.
Fox News Alert, the jury just sentenced Karmelo Anthony. We're going to be back with Brooke Taylor, who's live outside the courthouse. What do we have?
Hi, Jesse. Some pretty breaking news to give you right now. The jury has sentenced Karmelo Anthony to 35 years behind bars after finding him guilty of murder. I'm told that he is eligible for parole after he serves half his time. The jury had the option to give him as much as 99 years behind bars. But again, they have chosen to give him 35 years. And I do want to mention, we showed you those protests, a bunch of supporters out here. They've erupted again. Pretty shocking. This is a direct quote. I just heard one supporter say, quote, "Those twins," meaning the victim and his twin brother who were there at the time, are, quote, "domestic racist terrorists." So pretty unbelievable, Jesse.
All right, well, only 17 years and he's available for parole. Kind of seems soft. I would have given him the chair, but that's just me, Brooke. Thank you so much.
What's up, family? Karmelo Anthony's legal team just made their big move, and it blew up in their faces live. The race baiters who camped outside that courthouse, gone. No agenda, no narrative, just receipts. Hit the like button, share the video, subscribe to the channel, and we're going to break this down today, what actually happened in that courtroom, why the appeal isn't going to land the way the family hopes, and what the media got completely wrong from the jump, because what I want you to understand is how a case about a knife at a high school track meet somehow turned into a national conversation about race. That's the question. And by the end of the video, you're going to have your answer. So let's start with the basics, because a lot of people got swept up in the narrative before they ever heard the facts. Two 17-year-olds, a high school track meet in McKinney, Texas. It's raining, so Karmelo Anthony steps under a tent to get out of the weather. The problem is that tent didn't belong to his team. Austin Metcalf was there and asked him to leave. Words got exchanged, the confrontation escalated, and Austin Metcalf ended up stabbed. He died from that wound. That's the story at its core. Not a movie, not a political statement, just a sequence of choices that ended with a 17-year-old in the ground and another one facing the jury. Now, the defense came with a self-defense argument, 2 self-defense arguments to be exact, all right? And the first self-defense argument, the claim was that Karmelo felt surrounded, felt threatened, and acted out of fear. And look, I understand why the defense went that route. That's their job. They're supposed to build the best case they can. And this is the second, defense they tried to build along with that self-defense argument. The first one, this is the second scenario, right? This is from Fox 7 Austin. Just so I like to cite my sources so you guys know what I'm talking about and you guys can go check it out yourself. So the defense attorney you see highlighted, Toby Shook, is the defense attorney of Karmelo Anthony. And he began cross-examining 18-year-old Eddie Pera after the lunch break during the court hearing, the whole court situation taking place. So he was the teen that Anthony knew sitting under the memorial track tent. But this is the thing, the defense attorney within this scenario, this second scenario, right along with the self-defense argument, this second scenario to tie into their first self-defense argument that, Karmelo felt surrounded, felt threatened, acted out of fear. But this contradicts that because they tried to bring along the alleged best friend, Eddie Pera here, right? They claimed that he was going to hang out with his best friend who attends Memorial High School, the same high school as Austin Metcalf. And that's another reason to justify that Karmelo Anthony, the reason why he was under the tent on top of the rain, right? Even though it wasn't the school he attends track tent. It was Memorial High School track tent, which is Austin Metcalf's and Eddie Pera's, the alleged best friend, quote unquote, track tent, okay? Follow me here. So when they asked about their friendship, Pera said, every now and then we got together. The defense showed pictures of the two hanging out and pointed out that they got together at least 3 times over a 3-week period. Pera agreed, but said he only hung out with Anthony. He only hung out with Anthony when Anthony's girlfriend was around. He said Anthony's girlfriend was a common friend. So this couldn't have been Karmelo Anthony's best friend, Eddie Pera, because he only knows Karmelo Anthony by association from Karmelo Anthony's girlfriend. Ding, ding, ding. So with that being said, Toby Shook, which is the self-defense attorney or the defense attorney for Karmelo Anthony, goes on and asks Pera why he didn't speak up when his teammates were asking Anthony what he was doing under the tent. Eddie Pera said, I didn't feel the need to. Then the jurors went on lunch. They came back at 11:15. So when Eddie Pera, the teen who knew Anthony and greeted him as he entered Memorial Tent, he said he wouldn't call Anthony a friend, but someone I knew. Again, association, right? You are the common denominator between Karmelo Anthony and Memorial, the prosecutor asked. He said, yes, sir, he said, Eddie Pera. Did you think it was weird that Karmelo Anthony was in your tent, the attorney asked? The alleged quote-unquote best friend says, yeah. That's what Eddie Pera said. He testified that he didn't talk to Anthony for long, but never asked him to leave. He recalled Metcalf getting defensive over an outsider being in their tent. He said Metcalf was always leading, always protecting us. Eddie Pera said Anthony was provoking Metcalf. He recalled him saying something like, touch me, or you're going to have to move me. He also said Anthony put his hand in his bag. And he broke down, Eddie Pera broke down on the stand. This is him on the stand. I'm quoting. On the witness stand while testifying about seeing the stabbing, he admitted to being mad at Anthony because of what happened. Eddie Pera agreed with all the other student athletes who said this case is not about race. He also said Anthony had no reason to stab Metcalf and no cause for self-defense. Now, since the family members of Karmelo Anthony said this was race, this is about race and so forth, and how he's basically being mistreated and not being convicted based on what broke out because of their stories, because of the 2 narratives that I showed you. The one, that it was raining, so he went under another team's tent. Second was his best friend was there, allegedly, Eddie Pera. But the thing that's very, very contradicting or a coincidence or the irony, I should say, is Eddie Pera is black on the witness stand testifying against Karmelo Anthony. And you got to give this young man credit because he's courageous enough to say the truth. All right. That is an honorable thing. We're not going to take that away from him just because it may not be fitting the narratives of others. All right. So I wanted to explain the two narratives and break that down, right? Because I understand, like I said, the defense, they went these two routes. That's their job. They're supposed to build the best case they can. But it all falls apart with this, right? Because not only does the allegedly friend, Eddie Pera, contradicted their whole point of justifying why he was under that tent on top of the rain and the self-defense of him fearing for his life, but the prosecution pointed to surveillance footage as well as their strongest piece of evidence. And both the DA, district attorney, and the lead prosecutor said the same thing after the verdict. The footage showed a one-on-one confrontation, not a group closing in on Karmelo Anthony, not a mob, one person. And when you are in a one-on-one situation with one other person and you pull out a knife, I was scared, quote unquote, becomes a very hard sell to 12 people who just watched the tape on the jury. But here's the detail that got buried the fastest, and I want you to really sit with this one. Karmelo didn't find that knife on the ground during the argument. He walked into the track meet with it already on him. So that decision happened before Austin Metcalf ever said a word to him. Before the tent, before the rain, before any confrontation existed. Before the alleged friend to justify another reason why he went over there. He made a choice to carry a weapon to a high school sporting event. And that choice is what turned a disagreement into a death. And then there's the witness testimony that I just showed you, Eddie Pera, which the media barely touched, which is why I'm showing you guys and showing you guys the proof and the receipts and also citing my sources here on Fox 7 Austin, right? Took the stand and told the jury what they saw. And Eddie Pera, the witnesses were black, not outsiders, not people with an agenda against Karmelo, but people from the same community who saw what happened and told the truth about it under oath, which contradicts those who are inserting race in this to make this a national race conversation. So the jury that came back with a murder verdict wasn't all white. It was 12 members of that community who sat through the testimony, watched the footage, heard both sides, reached the same conclusion the prosecution did, that this was murder, plain and simple. So before we get into what the media did with all of this, I want that foundation to be clear because the facts were never complicated. 2 kids, a tent, a knife that was already there, witnesses who told the truth, and a jury that believed them. Now let's talk about what happened after the gavel came down. Now, here's where the story gets bigger than Karmelo Anthony. And I need you to pay close attention to this part. Austin Metcalf's father, right, stood in that courtroom at the sentencing and gave a victim impact statement. All right? He gave a victim impact statement, and this is from New York Post. And in that courtroom at the sentencing, giving that victim impact statement, in the statement, he says something that should have ended the entire conversation. He said, "This was never about race or politics, but you chose to make it about both." And I want to take it a step further, not to just show this article, but I also want to show you guys Jeff Metcalf, Austin Metcalf's father, saying it in video, again reiterating the importance of this.
This was never about race. Please don't make it about race and don't politicize it. And what did you do? You chose both. The race card, black fatigue, it's real. I'm sorry. You have embarrassed your own culture and race. Don't get me wrong, we got a lot of people that embarrass the shit out of me too. But you guys, you got a patent on that shit. And the only people that's going to change it are you. Don't blame the white person because we can't change it. But you're going to blame the white person for every fucking thing else. We're the bad ones. We're the one that held you down. Guess what? You can do everything in America that I can do. Tell me one thing you can't do that I can't do. We all have equal rights. What's it say? All men are created equal. The First Amendment protects free speech. I'm for it. Free speech doesn't guarantee you safety. Perfect example, Charlie Kirk, a man who I admired, looked up to. You know why? Because he could fight with words and logic. He didn't need fists, guns, or knives. No. He sat down and talked with you. How do you solve any situation when there's a problem? Communication. Charlie was an expert. That's one person I admit I would not want to debate. He was a walking chat GPT.
My apology, family, for the profanity. I understand he's a passionate father and he's human as well, but my apology for the profanity.
Aaron, you were inside this courtroom tonight when families shared their impact statements. Take us all inside those moments.
Yes, Doug, I was in the courtroom when the sentencing portion of this trial concluded, and we watched Karmelo Anthony as that sentence was read, 35 years. And right after that, you could see him visibly shaking. He was crying. I also looked over to the Metcalf family, and they had no visible outward reaction. It wasn't until that victim impact statement that we started to hear from them directly. First, Austin's mother, Megan Metcalf, spoke about the loss of her son. She said she misses talking to him. Now my conversations with him are one-sided, sitting at his grave. I have to accept that instead of walking beside me, he's walking above me. She described Austin as a loving son who is always quick to offer a hug and loved starting his day early. Austin's father, Jeff Metcalf, said the saddest part is we don't get to see you achieve all your goals. We were robbed, telling Anthony it's about right and wrong. Your consequence is accountability. You will face those consequences starting today. Jeff spoke about the anger he has carried since his son's death, but also the faith that helped him endure. Lastly, Austin's twin brother, Hunter Metcalf, addressed the court. He said, "You took a son, a brother, a friend, my best friend from this world. You took someone away from me who was supposed to be an uncle to my kids." Both Jeff and Hunter Metcalf asked Anthony to look at them while they spoke. Anthony was looking down a lot. After Hunter's statement, Anthony was escorted from the courtroom, again crying and shaking. Then we heard from Collin County District Attorney Greg Willis, who held a news conference. Here's what he had to say.
A year ago, when this senseless murder unfolded, I said that it had struck a deep nerve in Collin County and far beyond. I asked our community to ignore all the noise and instead be level-headed and patient as the process worked. And today, the process delivered accountability.
And the Metcalf family was at the press conference. They wanted their presence known, but they did not want to take any questions. One of the things that Jeff Metcalf talked about during the victim impact statements was being under a gag order and how hard that was for him, especially with all the social media talk that has gone on during this trial. So, Doug, I have no doubt that we will probably hear from him in the future.
So you guys heard it. That's the father of the boy who died. Standing in front of the family, the attorneys, the judge, and anyone watching, he told them directly that the race narrative was a choice someone made, not a reality the case produced. Now, watching what the media did with that moment, and you guys also can see, right? It says Austin Metcalf's dad goes scorched earth on Karmelo Anthony, demands son's killer look him in the eye. And then here goes the article from New York Post. Austin Metcalf's father stared down and scolded despicable, quote unquote, Karmelo Anthony when his son's killer refused to look him in the eyes during his emotional victim impact statement. Jeff Metcalf demanded that Anthony, 19, quote, don't look down after he was found guilty of first-degree murder in a fatal stabbing of 17-year-old Austin Metcalf earlier Monday afternoon in Collins County, Texas courthouse. We were robbed, quote, the elder Metcalf cried out as he told Anthony to face him. Don't look down, quote unquote. Anthony had been hanging his head during the impact statements and refused to look at the Metcalf family members, who included Austin's father, mother, and twin brother, Hunter. He said, "My boys weren't bullies," Metcalf said, referring to the claims made against both Austin and Hunter that they had targeted Anthony for sitting under their school tent at the Kai Kendall Stadium in Fresco, Texas. I was about to botch that word. "My son's death destroyed the person I used to be," he said. Quote, he does not exist anymore. People think grief is sadness. It is not. It is rage. Pure, unfiltered rage, Metcalf said as he slammed his fist against the table, angrily shouting, the outlet reported. "You failed your parents, you failed yourself, and you failed society. You don't belong in this community." He told Anthony, "A piece of me died with my son, and I'm expected to keep living. You're going to prison. I forgave you the day it happened. I don't forgive what you did." He added, "You can't look me in the eyes, but you can stab my effing son." All right? So, with my point. Now, watch the media with that moment, right? Left-leaning outlets ran with a headline, racial tensions rising, Arthur Metcalf's dad scorched earth on Carmelo Anthony, right? Um, over the verdict. And the family is in the room saying the opposite, and the headline is about racial tension. That's not reporting. That's a decision about what story you want to tell before the facts get in the way. The right-leaning outlets pulled a different quote from the exact same statement. The father looked at Carmelo and said, "You can't look me in the eye, but you can stab my son." Same moment, same courtroom, same victim impact statement. Two completely different stories depending on which outlet you open. And when you see that, you have to ask yourself a real question. If both sides are pulling opposite quotes from the same source, who's actually trying to give you the truth? And then Cardi B weighed in, as you guys can see on the screen. This is what she had to say.
I sure learned something from this. I learned to tell my sons, if a white boy, do not argue with no white boys. Cause baby, ain't no law protecting you if something goes down with them. That's what I learned from this case. I'ma tell my sons, if you arguing with a white boy, walk the fuck away. Cause the law don't protect you when it comes to dealing with.
Sorry for the profanity. That was artist Cardi B, musician. She's a female hip hop artist, highly known for rapper, etc., etc. But she weighed in, and I'm going to be respectful here because I don't think she's a bad person. I do think she spoke without the facts. She called the verdict disgusting, said it wasn't justified, said they were just trying to make an example out of him, as in Carmelo Anthony. But think about that for a second. If this jury wanted to make an example out of a 17-year-old, they had the range to go all the way to 99 years. They landed at 35. That's not making an example. That's a jury that actually weighed his age, weighed the circumstances, and still said this can't go unpunished. You can disagree with the outcome, but calling it an example when the maximum was almost 3 times the sentence they gave, that doesn't hold up. And then you got Representative Jasmine Crockett comes back in the tenfold, jumping in.
Crockett, you might have seen that Carmelo Anthony was sentenced to 35 years. I want to get your reaction to the trial and the verdict.
My heart breaks for so many reasons. And so I was just speaking to a student that is shadowing me who wants to be a public defender. And so it takes me back to what actually made me decide to get into this legislative work in the first place, because I know that our systems are broken. And what we saw with that verdict is the evidence of a broken system. Now listen, from everything that I understand, which I wasn't at the trial because obviously I got a day job, but it's my understanding that Carmelo ended up stabbing, puncturing, I don't know what this tool was that they talk about, knife, or some refer to it as a tool. He ended up hitting Austin one time, and it was about where he hit him. One time, 2 inches. This wasn't someone who said, hey, let me stab you 5, 6, 7 times. And so when you're looking at the punishment range, there's a reason in Texas that it goes from 5 to 99 or life, because you are looking at how intentional, like how bad was this? 35 years for a kid who had decided to go under a tent that was not his team's tent as it was raining, and simply didn't want to be put out in the rain by some random kid that he didn't know who was larger than him. Listen, a lot of people don't know what it is to live as a black person in this country, but just like you can give the benefit of the doubt to so many police officers when they go out and they shoot some black unarmed person, even though they are trained, the fact that there was little to no mercy seen or humanity seen when this black boy said that I was scared, or the fact that honestly anybody else who did something with such a small object, all I know is that it wasn't considered unlawful carrying of a weapon because the blade was not long enough, that they wouldn't even say, well, maybe this was more so something that looked like manslaughter.
Well, some people might say, why are you even bringing a knife like that to a track meet?
Yeah, people may say that, but walk a day in my shoes and then respond. Because we as black folks say, why is it that people need long-armed guns when we are going out and having a First Amendment protest? But people say that's their right. They are allowed to do that. And again, it wasn't against the law for him to have it. It may have been prohibited by school rules, which he wasn't at his school at the time, but it definitely was not against the law.
So you think race played a role in the verdict?
Oh my God. I know Collin County. So absolutely. Collin County is right north of Dallas County. And I can tell you that I have had cases that I felt like played out differently because of the counties that they were in. And unfortunately, that was not the county for a black boy.
So if this were a white boy in his exact same position, you don't think he'd get a 35-year sentence?
I would guarantee you it wouldn't have happened. I don't even know if he would have been convicted, because if a white boy would have said that they were afraid of a black boy, something tells me that that jury that didn't have any black people on it, they would have believed him in his fear.
Well, there's so many different opinions on this case. I mean, even your Republican colleague, Randy Fine, I mean, he's saying that he should get the death penalty. Your take on that?
Again, racism.
I'm gonna leave it there, family. First of all, the irony in that, because she inserted herself in a conversation and she don't even know for sure what the weapon was used for the unfortunate death, out of respect for the Metcalf family and the unfortunate death, like I said, of Austin Metcalf. But she tried to basically generalize a lot of things and basically spewed a lot of ignorance within, out of respect for the case in both families, I feel. Just being objective. Because the simple fact is, you sit there and you say, oh, well, he wasn't on school grounds. He may have violated school rules, but he wasn't on school grounds. From my anecdotal experience, being a part of a track team and being part of my high school when I was on the track team, 9 times out of 10, when you're at a track meet, you're still on a school vicinity, maybe at another high school track and field, or another high school track outside, but you still represent the school which you signed up to be part of, that curricular activity representing that school. So regardless, you were still within the vicinity of school, around the vicinity of other schools, competing while representing your school. So then it does violate to basically contradict her hypocritical statement. That's just common sense. But like I said, I don't know how you can insert yourself in a conversation when you don't even know the facts or what weapon that was used, for sure. But look, I wanted you guys to pay attention because she's an elected official. So, we all know that she didn't win her race, unfortunately, but I'm not getting into that. I'm just saying she's still currently an elected official. So the stakes of getting the facts right, you would think, would be higher. And she went on record pushing this idea that it was racial injustice, pointing to an all-white jury as proof that the system was stacked against Carmelo. And the problem is the jury wasn't all white. That's not an opinion. That's just not what happened. There were minority jurors on the panel, and the moment that detail gets checked, the whole framing falls apart. Again, she's also made a point about the knife, playing down its sides, treating it like it barely qualified as a weapon. But think about that for a second. The size of the knife doesn't change what it did. Austin Metcalf is still gone, unfortunately. A smaller knife didn't make the wound less fatal. And more importantly, Carmelo walked into the track meet with it already on him, which means the question was never really about the knife's size. It was about the decision to carry it there in the first place. When a sitting congresswoman gets on camera and the basic facts of her argument don't hold up, it's not a small thing. That's someone with a platform using it to push a story that the courtroom already rejected. And it matters because people listen. People in the community trust names they recognize. And when those names say, quote unquote, all white jury, and the jury wasn't all white, that's not advocacy. That's misinformation dressed up as justice. And then the family walked out of that courthouse. And I want to be careful here because I'm not trying to pile on people who are grieving, but I want you guys to see this last clip of the family walking out the courtroom. And this is the Karmelo Anthony family. That's the mother waving.
Back off.
That's the father, I'm assuming. This is the mother right here. So there you have it. That was the mother at the end of the clip, holding up the heart sign, hearts, and saying those things: racist bias, racist prejudice. I quote. And I have to address that directly because those are serious words that deserve a serious response. The witnesses who got Carmelo convicted were black, not a white jury acting alone, not a system operating in a vacuum. black eyewitnesses took the stand, told the truth about what they saw. And the testimony was part of what brought the verdict. So when you walk out of that courthouse yelling racism, you're talking about the people in your own community as well, if you want to be technical, but you're also discrediting those courageous individuals who should be honored for telling the truth, right? Who showed up and told the truth under oath. And here's the part that nobody wants to say out loud, right? When you look at it and you see how things pan out, it also makes me wonder if the judge should have allowed cameras in this court hearing. Because then it would leave no room for speculation and the world can see it for what it is. But since the courtroom didn't allow cameras, the judge, and I understand making it ironclad to try to make it as factual as possible and objective and not fuel rage or anything like that. But you can't satisfy everyone. And the simple fact is, no matter what, people already have their mind made up. I always have this saying where I rather teach children because grown adults already have their mind made up. Right? And you can't make nobody think what they want to think. You can't tell nobody what they want to do. They're their own person. You only can control yourself. But I'm saying all that to say that it leaves room for speculation because the cameras weren't in the courtroom. And now individuals are potentially saying lies or anything in which the narrative they want to spew that they feel as though should have been the narrative and should be the narrative. And now they know that there's no type of receipts to justify if they were right or wrong. So they're basically being biased enough to spew the narrative they want because now there's room for speculation they know they're taken advantage of because the cameras weren't there. Now in day and age, if you don't have the receipts, anybody will run with any story they want. But if you have the receipts, it's hard to basically discredit that, if you get what I'm saying, family. So, look, all I'm saying is, with all this, the only people making it about race are the ones who needed to be about race. Because without that frame, this is a straightforward story about a bad decision and its consequences. And that story is harder to sell to an audience that wants to be angry at a system rather than honest about a moment. Jasmine Crockett couldn't even discredit it. They said, yeah, he had a knife and, he murdered Austin Metcalf. She said, yeah, well, try to walk in my shoes. Still doesn't absolve from the simple fact that it's a murder. So, like I said, the notice of appeal got filed from the Karmelo Anthony family, as we know of currently. And I want to give you guys the plain English explanation of what that actually means, because a lot of people are treating it like a second chance at a different outcome. Again, changing the narrative and remixing definitions and things that what they wanted to believe to obviously um basically to support the narrative they want it to be rather than what it actually is factually. An appeal isn't a new trial. You can't walk into an appeals court and say, we didn't like how it went and expect the judge to throw the whole thing out. You have to show that something went legally wrong in the original proceeding, a procedural error, a constitutional violation, evidence that was handled improperly, and that's the standard. Feelings about the verdict don't meet it. The footage is still the footage. The witnesses still said what they said. The knife was still there. None of that changes because a notice got filed. And if you want to be technical, family, I just thought of this, just taking it a step further. If it really was self-defense and standing 10 toes down on it, then Karmelo Anthony would have, without a doubt, took the stand and said his point, right, and spoke his truth. And I understand why, because the self-defense may not have advised him to not do it, because as a young man, he may get trickled up or, tripped up in his words, trying to say one thing another way within a cross-examination, and they felt that it would tarnish the whole thing. But my thing is, if it truly was what it was, then you would just speak your truth, even though at the end of the day, it still doesn't justify death or anybody's life being lost. But you get my point, hopefully. I'm just trying to look at this thing objectively, right? So the district attorney and the lead prosecutors both came out after the sentencing, and they said they're extremely confident in the verdict. And when the people who built the case say that publicly, it tells you how solid the foundation actually is, which in turn says my point. If the foundation was so solid with Karmelo Anthony, they should allow Karmelo Anthony to take the stand. But like I say, there's one more thing worth noting. The prosecution told reporters they were prepared for Karmelo to take the stand. They actually hoped he would, like I said, right? And if you think about what that means from a strategy standpoint, when the other side is hoping your client testifies, it usually means they're ready for whatever he might say. The fact that he didn't take the stand tells you his own team wasn't confident about what that would look like under cross-examination. Again, I just reiterating that again because I think that plays a crucial role in this. with being so confident and then filing an appeal, right? So the jury had 5 years to 99 on the table. They chose 35. That's not a runaway verdict from people who stopped thinking. That's a group of 12 people who sat through all of it and landed in the middle with their eyes open. And this brings us to the part that goes beyond this case, beyond McKinney, Texas, and speaks to all of this. I want to say something clearly before I go any further. A parent fighting for their child, even when that child was wrong, that's not something I'm going to criticize. That's love. That's what parents do, right? If that were anyone else's kid, I'm sure they will go through any legal avenue available to them and fight every step of the way to make sure the process was fair. And if after all of that, the outcome stayed the same, accept it, right? Because going through the process is honorable. Lying about what happened is not. That's the real difference between those two things. And I think of a lot of people surrounding this case cross that line. And like I said, that's the speculation opportunity that's wildly being taken advantage of here with all the narratives. But you can love someone completely and still be honest about the decision that put them in that room. Those two things aren't in conflict. Actually, real love requires that honesty. And because the alternative is building a story around your pain that keeps you from ever seeing clearly. And here's what this actually looks like in real life. Karmelo Anthony didn't become dangerous the moment Austin Metcalf spoke to him. He walked into that track meet already carrying a knife. That's not the heat of the moment. That's a pattern of thinking that said it was acceptable to move through a public space within a school vicinity around other schools armed. And that thinking, not the confrontation, not the rain, not the tent, is where the tragedy started. The confrontation was the match, but the knife was the gasoline that was already there. Wrong is wrong. It doesn't matter what color you are, what neighborhood you came from, or what the outside world decided to say about the case. A 17-year-old boy is dead. Another 17-year-old made a choice that caused it. And the community, all of our communities, deserve people who will say that plainly instead of reaching for a racial frame every time a verdict doesn't go the way they hope or any type of other untruthful narrative, allowing speculation to overrule the truth, right? And that goes for any community, any race. The way we continue to move forward on the right path is in truth. And the book of Galatians says it straight. You reap what you sow. And I'm not saying that to judge Karmelo Anthony as a person. I'm saying it because it's the most honest thing anyone can offer right now. Our choices carry weight. They carry weight before we make them, in the moment we make them, and long after we like to forget them. And the people around us are watching, right? They are watching. Young people especially are watching. And what they need to see from us is not a crowd screaming outside a courthouse. They need to see adults who tell the truth even when it costs us something. Don't let outside voices take your grief and turn it into a narrative that pulls you further from what's real. The truth is the only thing that actually sets people free, and that's not a political statement. That's just what's true. The courtroom didn't care about the narrative. It cared about what happened, what the footage showed, and what the witnesses said under oath. That's it. Drop a comment and tell me what you think. Hit the like button, share this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on your post notifications so you never miss a breakdown. Spread the peace, love, and positivity. Let the love supersede the hate, family. On that note, family, I hope you guys enjoyed this video and got some value from it. Peace.